Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Alexis. I'm a blind author, content creator, and hopefully eventually freelancer. I've been calling myself a freelancer, but I really haven't, I've been trying to market this idea and haven't quite developed, a clientele. So really not working there yet as a freelancer at the moment. Anyway, if you are interested in any of my stuff related to freelance, feel free to email me. I'm specifically offering beta reading services. And today, I would like to say, first of all, before I tell you what we are talking about today, I would first like to say, Happy Disability Pride Month, everybody. I hope that it goes well for you, and whatever it is you do, I hope turns out well. This is my addition to Disability Pride Month, because today I am talking about a memoir called The Country of the Blind, by Andrew Leland. And it is interesting because normally I review certain nonfiction in shorts, and I had a lot to say about this one, especially regarding the NFB, which is mentioned, I think, in mainly chapter 10. But I had a lot to say, and this is like the first long form review that I have related to nonfiction, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, again, I'm going to repeat something I said at the end of this video. It'll be repeated. If I see any negative comments about the author specifically in my comment section, I will delete and block you. I don't want negative comments on the author in any of my videos at all, but especially this one, and so on and so forth, stuff I talk about. And another disclaimer I would like to put up here, because I think this is also very important for me to put in the beginning. I talk about the NFB and how I feel about the centers at the moment, from what I know, as well as generally stuff I maybe disagree with related to the NFB. However, I do want to say that I am currently an active member of the NFB. I'm also Sorry. Anyway, I am an active member of the NFB. I am also an active member of the ACB. So I am currently an active member of both organizations. And while I have my opinions, I do want to say that I am still, I do abide by these opinions. I do think that what I have said, it speaks to me specifically. These are the things that I still believe. However, I think that you can be a part of an organization, and even if you disagree, you may find some common ground in the organizations, depending on what they are. I, for one, joined at a time when I really needed, when I needed to essentially go into this, into something. I joined during election season, specifically. I joined the ACB and the NFB when I knew there was a possibility that Trump could win the presidency. Unfortunately, he did, but I joined during that time. I wanted to I wanted to somewhat get involved without, I wanted a kind of like a community, but also I wanted to be involved in organizations in a way, almost politically, because I knew that there was always that possibility that if Trump won, that the certain rights or certain related things to disability could be affected, and I wanted to be a part of it if need be. So I decided to join the organizations. Truly, I was after the Biden debate, and Biden and Trump debate, the first one, and I saw the news and everything, and I'm like, the reactions, and I'm like, oh no, that's concerning. And I felt there was concern, so I wanted to join and be a part of something, essentially. So I joined. I watched what was streamed of the NFB convention, and I kind of understood why people would join it. And I eventually joined my local chapter, and I also ended up joining the ACB, the affiliate for ACB here where I live, in order to I just want to be kind of a part of it. I wanted to have that kind of community, and I felt that it was important for me to do that. That said, that doesn't necessarily mean I will agree with everything that is done all the time. I think the NFB has done great work for people who are blind, and will continue to do so, and has continued to do so. I may disagree with a couple of things, but I think that they, in general, have done more good than bad. And I also do not know how things have changed in the NFB Center, so take anything I say related to NFB Centers with a grain of salt. Especially the whole sexual misconduct stuff. I don't know what has happened with that as much. I know that I think they hired someone from the like a third party to investigate, and I think they offer a couple of more things now, but I don't know enough about that to give opinions on the current stuff. So this was recorded sometime before I joined the NFB. So keep that in mind as watching, and I will come back at the end with final thoughts, but I felt this was important to say. In the meantime, if you are interested in this, I really hope you enjoy this video. Usually I plug my stuff or whatever, but I'm not going to do that at the moment because this doesn't feel like the right time to do that. So anyway, enjoy the video, and I will see you at the end. Okay, so I found out I had a little too much to say about this book, and I couldn't quite fit it into a short. So I'm reviewing my first nonfiction book in a long form version or medium form. I don't know how long this is going to be, but it won't fit into a short a YouTube short. So we're gonna do it like I would review any one of my fiction books. I do have a couple of things I kind of want to say beforehand, and one of them is that this is a memoir of a person going through their blindness journey, and I'm not giving my opinion necessarily on that part of the blindness journey. Like, I'm not necessarily giving my opinion on their blindness journey. I'm giving my opinion specifically on how said things and subject matters or whatever are written in the book. I want to make that really clear because I think everyone goes through their blindness journey really differently. I'm still going, I think. And here's the thing. Let me say it this way. Let me rephrase that. I think that your blindness journey just doesn't stop. I am 24. I have been blind my whole life, and I still think that I am going through a blindness journey, and that sometimes goes, up and down. Like, accessibility stuff comes into the blindness journey, the way I deal with blindness and acceptance. I think that will probably change throughout life, and I don't think it changes just because you've accepted your blindness and because you realize I'm blind and stuff like that. So we have I think it's important to recognize that, and I want to bring that up because I wanted to make sure to state from the beginning that I'm not judging his blindness journey. Everyone has a different point of view on blindness, and everyone also has a different journey and a different ways of accepting their blindness, and so on and so forth. So I want to bring that up because I think it's important. I'm going over mainly some of the bigger aspects of the memoir, some of the writing decisions made, some of the things that I found kind of interesting, and I'm specifically going over one part. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do with the NFB, and I'm specifically going over that because I think it's important that I give an opinion on that as a blind person. Again, I also want to say this is just one blind person's opinion on this memoir. I would highly recommend that you read it if you are someone who is blind or visually impaired. If you're sighted, I would also recommend that you read it so that you get a better understanding of us, in at least in one point of view, because it is written for you sighted people. It isn't written for a blind audience. It's written for a sighted one. There are moments when it feels like it is written for a blind audience, like it's talking to a blind audience, but it's mainly written for a sighted audience. And I think that's kind of an important thing to know when going into the memoir. I'm going to read this Goodreads synopsis, and then we'll continue talking about that stuff. I just wanted to state that from the beginning. I don't want it to seem like I'm judging this person, because I'm not. I think that I'm hoping that their their blindness journey is going well. I hope that they they're learning as much as possible, and that they are feeling comfortable and confident uh, in their blindness journey. Those are my hopes, but I wanted to just make sure that that is stated outright, because this is a memoir, and we don't I try not to, judge anyone. I don't want to judge people in the way that they write their stuff. I may judge the my thoughts on the memoir, and I may like feel certain ways about the memoir, and I may say, oh, this memoir is like this or whatever, but I'm not judging or rating them. I'm just judging, or specifically rating their writing. And I just wanted to make sure we have that clear. Okay, let us read the synopsis. A witty, winning, and revelatory personal narrative of the author's transition from sightedness to blindness, and his quest to learn about blindness as a rich culture all its own. Okay. What the country of the blind is about seeing, but also about marriage and family, and the moral and emotional challenge of accommodating the parts of ourselves that scare us. A warm, profound, and unforgettable meditation on how we adjust to new ways of being in the world. This is a quote from Rachel Aviv, author of Strangers to Ourselves. Interesting. Okay. We meet Andrew Leland as he's suspended in the liminal state of the soon to be uh he's midway through his life with retinitis pigmentosa, a condition that ushers those uh who live with us, or with it from sightedness to blindness over years, even decades. He grew up with full vision, but starting in his teenage years, his sight began to degrade from the outside in, such that he now sees the world as if through a narrow tube. Soon, but without knowing exactly when, he will likely have no vision left. Full of apprehension, but also dogged curiosity, Leland embarks on a sweeping exploration of the state of being that awaits not only the physical experience of blindness, but also its language, politics, and customs. He negotiates his changing relationships with his wife and son, and with his own sense of self, as he moves from his mainstream, quote, typical, unquote, life to one with a disability. Part memoir, part historical and cultural investigation, The Country of the Blind represents Leland's determination not to merely survive this transition, but to grow from it, to seek out and revel in that which makes blindness enlightening. Thought provoking and brimming with warmth and humor, The Country of the Blind is a deeply personal and intellectually exhilarating tour of a way of being that most of us have never paused to consider, and from which we have much to learn. Okay, I want to say, first of all, this synopsis is really long. I never complain about a book synopsis so much. I mean, I read it and I sometimes have my thoughts, but not all of them end up making it to the, to the to the page, and like to my reviews. But this synopsis is really long, and most of it's being complimentary. I don't mind this. I just wanted to bring up that it's a really long synopsis, and I don't understand why it's so long. It has nothing to do with him. I'm pretty sure it was the publishers that wrote this blurb, and and stuff. Okay, so other things I think besides the synopsis being really long, I want to say I had not read this synopsis before. I kind of just I actually, this book was my February choice for not mine, but like it was the book I was reading for February for book club. And so when it kind of came up, it was a book I originally wanted to read. I had it on my TBR and everything. There was a point in time I had it. I was waiting it on hold for the library, but then I took away the hold and decided to go through Bard instead. But the point is, though, that I already had this book in my TBR, and I was already planning to read it. I was already kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna read this book anyway, so great. And the fact that it was part of the book club kind of just gave me a reason to read it sooner. So I read it, and I read it in 2 days. It's a very short book. It's 368 pages, so it's really short. But also in audio, it's even shorter because it's just like 7 hours and some change. So it definitely is short, for me at least. I read it. I started it like I think on a Friday, and then I didn't read it for Saturday, but I finished it on Sunday. And I think it was a good way to read it because I have I got to kind of, I think, see it in like, because I read things either way in most of the time when it's books like this. I try to read them all in one sitting, but like I think it was a good way to read it because I was already planning to read it for the weekend, but also like taking a break from it the first time, and then getting to read the rest I think was a good idea, just because I think I got to think about the other things, and I needed to, I think, consider the way that it was written. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, so I also want to say really fast, there's a little bit of discussion of ableism in the book, which he reflects on because he also had those that kind of internalized ableism, and the author does reflect on it, and I think it's worth noting because I think it's worth reflecting on things like this, and I appreciate it. So, for the most part, the memoir was good. I enjoyed reading it. I think that it was an interesting point of view into blindness, especially from someone who is learning. Like you can definitely tell this is something from someone who is learning and maybe hasn't been ingrained in blindness for as long as someone like me. And I think it's great. I think we learn every day though, so it's like, yeah, but it's I think it's great. I think it's a really good I think it's a really good look at blindness and different parts of it, different parts of blindness, and how the author feels about them, and maybe how how he might deal with them. I also really appreciate the historical information that comes along with the memoir. I think it's great. We should all learn about things like this, and I think it was great to bring it into the memoir. So those are my main like positive thoughts on the memoir. Now for the critiques I do have. I want to make an argument that this book should not have been written the way it was. And I'm not talking about the information delivered in the book. In the content. I'm talking about the format. So this book is written in like, it has like an introduction, and then it has like 10 chapters and one conclusion. But the thing is that this is written in a way that it can be just a little confusing because it jumps from one subject to the other really quickly, and it's like it's kind of like reading a journal but with like no dates or anything like that, and it's just it's very it's a bit when I was starting to read it, it was a bit jarring, jumping from one subject to the next. And I kind of was like, what? Like, why are we changing this quickly? They call it a memoir, but it doesn't really read like a memoir, if that makes sense. Like, memoirs tend to have a specific format from the ones I have, like, based on the ones I've read. And this one doesn't have the format of a memoir. I would argue that this would have done way better as an essay collection. I love essay collections, by the way, so I just, but so that's why I kind of recognize this. But I feel like this would have been written way better as an essay collection. They kind of read like journal entries that could then be split into smaller essays that you could title them. And you could still do the whole chapter thing, but instead, instead you would have like the chapters separated into essays. Like, but I would argue that this would be better written as an essay collection that goes from one subject to the other, with, of course, the major theme being blindness and how it affects you as a person who happens to be blind. I think that this would have been better because that way the subjects wouldn't like it wouldn't be so jarring to go from one subject to the other. And I think it would just give you more space too, because you would have all these things could be hopefully. One of my other critiques is that I don't think some of the subjects were explored well enough, such as audio description, for example. I don't think some of this stuff was explored very well. Like, there were subjects that were explored really, 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 really well, and then there were others that just were like, they just got like a cursory exploration. And I think in an essay collection, you could have gone in a little bit more detail with some of these subjects. And as I said, it also wouldn't be as jarring to read for you to go from one subject to the next. When I first read it, I had a difficult time trying to figure out who the audience of the book was. I don't think it was super clear to me at first. Now I know, but I think at the time it definitely wasn't clear to me. But it's definitely written for a sighted audience. It's written in a way that a sighted audience would understand, and it's also written in a way to explain to a sighted audience how we navigate the world, how we are as blind people, and so on and so forth. I don't hate this, but the reason I think I was confused is because there were moments in the book, very little moments in the book, that were sprinkled in that felt like the author was talking to a blind audience rather than a sighted one. And I think you can make the balance and make it for both. But the thing is that 90, like, for me at least, this was my experience. It felt like 99% of the book, and it definitely was definitely written for a sighted audience. And like, there was like that 1% of the author talking to a blind audience. Again, I don't necessarily hate this. I just have mixed feelings about it. I think that both sighted and blind audience would benefit from reading the book, but I can definitely tell it was primarily written for a sighted audience, if that makes sense. It definitely was like a primary thing. Primarily, it was written for a sighted audience, but I think I can, but I think I can see, I can see how I think a blind audience would benefit from this book. For example, if you're not super educated in blindness history, which I'm not as well educated on it, but I know a little bit of, this is something that could be good, because you could kind of learn a little bit more of parts of the blindness history. If you are looking for like just other things you may not know about, like, there are tidbits of information here that you might benefit from as a blind person, including part of the NFB philosophy, and which I'm going to talk about later. Well, not the NFB philosophy, but I'm going to talk about one thing that they do and that I don't have issues with. I have problems with. I'm going to be honest. I got an issue with it, and we'll talk about why, and we'll talk about why this, for me, this is an issue. But these are things that you can like mention. These are things that you know of that can be like, how do I explain? Like, these are things that you can kind of just you kind of understand. Like, you just get to see them. You get to learn about them, basically. So there are pieces of information woven into the memoir that I think can be useful to a blind audience, but it is primarily written for a sighted audience. It took a while for it to be clear for me, but I I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting when reading this book. I had seen an interview with the author, but that was like sometime last year, and I don't fully remember it like that, so I can give you an idea. But I think it was it's definitely, yeah, cited as a primary audience, which I think it's good for them to have a source of education. It's not something I would do, but I appreciate when other people do it. Um, but I that's those are my thoughts. And then so those are some of the things I would say. And now we're gonna talk about the one part of this book. This is not on him. This is the one part of the book that triggered me as a reader. Okay, let me give you some backstory. So I learned about the NFB centers, I think, a couple of years ago. So NFB is the National Federation for the Blind, and it is it's an organization it's an organization that does stuff related to like just blind or visually impaired people. There are other organizations that do similar things. They focus, I think, on different aspects and stuff like that. And I think it's very interesting how different each of the organizations are. By the way, the book even talks about how like the American Council for the Blind, ACB, was formed out of the people that were in NFB that weren't happy with the way that things were done at NFB. And I think that was a really interesting thing to know, and how that works. I think it's interesting to look at that, and also know that all of like each organization deals with different issues differently, and that even though they try to say that they are for all of us, they're not always they don't they can't represent every single blind person. Like they don't do that, right? But they do things, I think, on an average level. It's very interesting to my opinions, I think, on organizations like this. So I learned about them a couple of years ago, and one of the things I had considered going to an NFB center when I was younger, because I wanted the O&M stuff, and I wanted the their training in the cooking or whatever for like the 9 months. I kind of liked the idea of going away for 9 months and being in their residential program. But one of the things in the beginning that pushed me away from it was the fact that you had to use a straight cane for the training, and you had to use a straight white cane. And I was very happy with my my colored cane that I had bought pretty recently at the time, I think, and I still have to this day. And I'll tell you more about that in a little bit, and maybe I'll make part of this a story, because I think it's important to be aware of this, because blindness kind of meets us at different points in time, and we have, I think, different confidence levels of certain parts of our blindness. And you know what? I think we it's good to talk about this. So that was part of the reason I had not considered them. But later on, I think somewhere around the pandemic, it was revealed, or we found out that the NFB has some sexual misconduct issue. So yeah, they have like sexual misconduct, and I'm like, yeah, that's another reason not to go. It's not safe. So those are like the main two reasons that I have been like, no, I'm not going to an NFB center. It's not safe, and it's also, I just don't like some of their philosophy related stuff. So that was part of it. So chapter 10 of the book, spoilers, I guess, if you haven't read this book, but chapter 10 of the book mostly deals with NFB in the training center, because he went to a training center for like 2 weeks to kind of see how they teach and all the fun stuff. And he went, and I and there was a conversation about it, like basically like he told us all about it. And one of the things that they have there is the reason that they make you use a straight white cane is because it would force you it would force you to not hide your blindness. Now, when I tell you that I looked at that and I went, oh no, that's not good. I I don't I was like, I read this and I was like, excuse me? What if some of us are just not there? And I read this and I was just like, oh no. No 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 no. This is horrifying. So listen, I may be, I think, confident on my blindness. I may talk about it in vlogs. I may complain to you because I'm perfectly happy talking about the good and the bad of my blindness. I may do that in vlogs, but there is so much disrespect by the NFB in doing that I was I was just I was horrified. Like, there is that kind of ideology. I think, in my opinion, it is disrespectful to blind people. It is a disrespectful thing. It was at least disrespectful to me. I was definitely offended on people who may have gone through things that I did. So I will make it again. I'll mention again. Everyone has a different blindness journey, and it doesn't end just because you've accepted your blindness. If anything, now you have to battle the acceptance of blindness versus how things are so much challenging, and now you have to choose. Like, this is my case. I have to choose every day of my life to accept blindness, no matter where things are going wrong, no matter how much advocating fucks up with my mental health, no matter um, how much, generally speaking, blindness fucks with my life, because society is not designed for people like me. No matter how much it fucks with my life, I have to choose every day to accept accept my blindness and be like, yeah, I'm still proud of my blindness. I'm okay with my disability. I have to choose that every day. And you're gonna try to force me to accept it by using a straight cane I can't even fucking fold? No. That is an insult to me. That was horrible to me to read this. And because I did read one of the books I read related to the NFB was Freedom for the Blind, The Secret of Empowerment, and I had some issues with that too. But reading this and the reason they did this, I was like, oh no. No, 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 no. So I want to try to explain this in my head for you as to why I was hurt and triggered by this. Listen, the reason, that is what they said. They have like it's a straight white cane and it doesn't fold. So when you go out, that means that you as a blind person have to figure out what I'm going to do with this cane. If I'm going to get into a car, how am I going to put it so that it doesn't hit me or other people? How am I going to, because the reason they say about the white cane is that because you can't fold it, the straight one, because you can't fold it, you can't find an excuse to stash it away. And I guess they consider that hiding blindness for some reason. And that's not true. I mean, even when I stash my cane away, I actually can't hide my blindness because people can tell I'm blind by looking at me. And for some people, that's the case. For others, not so much. But for other people like me, that's the case, right? So, you have to figure out then, how are you gonna deal with your cane that you cannot fold, and that you have to figure out a place for it, and probably take up a lot of space. I was definitely triggered by the whole taking up a lot of space thing, because when I was a kid, I didn't have access to Bookshare until I was like 13, 14. That's when I could download my ebooks. If I wanted to read a goddamn book, I had to get the Braille copy. And you know how much space those books take up? A lot. Because some of the bigger books will have more, like a bunch of different volumes. And it sucked, okay? It sucked to read when I was a kid. I avoided it at all costs. And then I really got into the book and I wanted to finish it, but I would avoid reading to some degree when I was a kid because it sucked to read as a kid. Like, reading as a kid was the worst because I had to deal with the physical copies of Braille books. And generally speaking, just Braille books are just not my favorite for that, right? So it takes a lot of space. I was like, I like my space, right? So that's part of the reason, I think, part of the reason that I definitely got hurt by it. But also, not all of us have the same amount of confidence in doing something like this. And one of the problems I find with the NFB training center is that it takes away your choice to on what kind of cane you want to use. It what it does is it removes it doesn't give you it removes the choice. It tells you that you have literally no choice but to use this cane during training hours, because at least when it's out, like when you're not training, you can probably go back to using your folding cane, which is delightful. But in training hours, it takes away your choice on what kind of cane you want to use, especially if you're not used to a cane like that. I do not like when anyone takes away choices from other people, let alone a blindness center. I think if you take away the choice from people, you are a terrible person. And that means that NFB, to me, is not a great idea for a training center for me personally. Because if they took away my choice on my cane, I would be really annoyed. And also, the other problem is that it doesn't meet people where they're at. It does not. So let me go back and I'm going to tell you something really interesting. I may be accepting of my blindness now, but like I said, I have to choose to do that every day. But when I was a kid, that was not the case. And I did everything possible not to use my cane for the longest time. Like my O&M instructor, I think, had a habit of telling me to use my cane when I went out with family. I never did. I left it home and I relied on sighted people to guide me. And there was a reason for that. And it had to do with my confidence. I did not want to be the person using a cane out of my house. I also didn't I didn't want to be seen with my cane. It had nothing to do with hiding my blindness, since again, people can tell by looking at me that I'm blind. They know, and I'm assuming it has to do with something like that I'm not looking at them and that my eyes are just closed or whatever. But people can tell that I'm blind by looking at me. And the cane to me felt like another way of being singled out as a kid. So I didn't want to carry it around. I didn't want it to be a symbol that I was different. I think I started going out with it again. I generally okay, I'm gonna just go out with it, whatever, when I was like 17. But again, I had grown. I still hated it. But the first time that I felt comfortable and was really happy to go out with my cane and actually use it was when I was able to order a cane for myself. Because before, I had whatever cane the commission gave me, and it was like a regular white cane, that kind of like the white and red cane. And I didn't like that, right? But I was able to, when I got my first SSI check, I think it was the first or the second. Actually, no, it may have been the second or the first, but somewhere when I was receiving SSI in 2019, or started receiving, because I still do. But when I started, one of the first few things I bought myself when I was receiving, when I started receiving SSI was a new cane. And I decided to get a colored cane. I got a cane that was, I got a cane that was, it was gold, it was like a yellow gold, and it was for the top, and then it was blue in the bottom. It was like a royal blue, and I had a red ball, rolling ball tip, and it folds into six sections. Wow. What did my tongue do? Anyway, into 6 sections. And it folds up so small that it literally fits in my bag, because the other ones I used to have only folded into 3. And I saw from another blind person that they had a cane that folded into more sections, that I was like, I really like that. That's awesome. And I really enjoyed the the fact that it folded so small, and I wanted to get something like that. So that was one of the first few things that I bought myself for when I started to receive SSI. And I um I was I was really happy to go out with this cane because it was the first cane I bought myself, but it was also the cane that was colorful. It was a cane that I could be like, hey, look, I bought this cane. Look how great it is. And it's something I could show off. It's kind of like the difference between wearing a talking watch over an Apple Watch. The talking watch is it's not the best. I don't enjoy the talking watch, but also while the Apple Watch is trendy and it's something that everyone else would wear. Like my I could walk down the street with my Apple Watch and know that other people may or may not be wearing an Apple Watch because it is a trendy watch. It is a watch that everyone else is wearing. And it feels good. And that was like the first time I felt kind of more comfortable saying, all right, I'm gonna use my cane. I can bring it out. I can show it off. It's kind of like the first time that I felt confident saying, yeah, I'm gonna use a cane. But that did not happen for a long time, right? So when NFB takes away the choice and makes it so that you really can't do anything with that cane, they do one of two things. They do a couple things. Well, first of all, it is for me like for my thoughts is that, one, they take away that choice. They don't let you. They don't come to you as you are. In whatever where you're at. They don't meet you where you're at. Now if you are a good instructor, I expect this from a bad instructor, but if you are a good instructor, your job is to meet your students where they are. And that might be that they're not ready to be showing off their blindness. They may not be, it may be someone who maybe is losing vision and they're like, I'm not comfortable using this cane and yet and showing and having a cane taking up so much space and being and it being noticeable that I'm super blind. Like as an instructor, your job is to meet those students where they are and to help them get there, not force them to get there. Oh, I just find it so irritating that this is one of the things that they do. When you take away the choice from someone, things go off the rails, and you're just as bad as the other people who try to take choices away from us and who treat us like we're children. You are just as bad as they are, in my opinion. And two, the other thing that they do is, potentially speaking, this may not be for everybody, but they make their lives harder by taking away that choice. For, well, one, like I said in the first one, you're not meeting them where they're at, so they may not feel comfortable with what you're doing. But also, I don't know about you, but I would feel really bad if I was carrying a straight cane that does not fold and I have to figure out where to put it in the car. If I go into a room and there's no space, how the hell am I supposed to put it somewhere so that it doesn't hit anyone and it doesn't take up so much space? I would be embarrassed. Using a straight white cane, I would feel embarrassed and somewhat, it would be really humiliating because I would be taking up so much space that I don't know where to put this fucking cane and I can't stash it into my bag. That is embarrassing to me. Like, you don't know how people will feel about that. And I'm not talking about the greater society. Fuck them. I'm talking about the people who actually have to use that cane. I think there is such there's such a disconnect with what NFB is trying to do and them using this cane. It's really, it was very triggering to read. It was very offensive. It was very insulting. And I think they could do better, but they're currently not. And it seems like they're stuck on old philosophies that partly are good, but just haven't been shaped up to something better. So yeah, I was triggered. I would have loved for this theme though, since we're talking about one of the subjects that doesn't get explored as much in the memoir. I would have loved for this to be explored a little bit more by the author, and I think he gave some thoughts. Like, they gave some thoughts, and there was like but it felt more like just exploring this, but I just wanted to explore some more about that. Like, what were your thoughts? Is that like he eventually seemingly gained his confidence to use a cane, but like, if you had to do something like this, what would have been your thoughts? Would you have been okay with something like this? I would have loved more exploration based on his point of view though in this. But yeah, no, this chapter I was upset. I was definitely into like it. I feel like that is an offensive thing that NFP is doing. I was definitely triggered. I was really, it was really bad because I had those experiences when I was a kid. You know, when I was like, I had the experience of not feeling confident with a cane and wanting to hide away because I was blind. I had the experience of wanting it not to be really known that I was blind. I had that experience, and you know, there are moments when I still do. And I think it's fair to note those experiences and for NFB to acknowledge those experiences and meet the students that go into their centers where they are and acknowledge that yeah, it's a hard road, but here we are, we're gonna help you. And maybe one of the things you can do is give them the choice of using a folding cane versus a straight cane. Give them the choice of using their own cane, if anything, to make them feel more comfortable. That is something that no one should take away from you. No one should take away your choice, whether you are disabled or able-bodied. And I think NFB is inching is in that territory where they're taking away your choice when you're training by taking away the choice in their training hours and giving you a straight white cane. I think that is hurtful, and I think that is offensive to people that maybe that might have gone to things like this, like me, who maybe would go into their center who had even considered it. But also, I think that just might be really, really hard on people who maybe aren't ready for something like that, and NFB is pushing that on you. And if you did go through something like this, or to similar experiences to me, and you ever had to go to an NFB center, um, and they forced you to do that, and you were not comfortable with it, I'm really sorry, because that is not something anyone should do. No one should do that. On a positive topic though, here's another really positive of the memoir that I want to mention before I stop. Um, this memoir proves, or this book just proves, that children are better at accepting blindness than adults. And I say this because we got to see a couple of like points in the memoir where the author's child is extremely accepting of blindness, and he says it all matter of fact, and he's like, wow, you're going blind or whatever. And when like there's a part where I remember that they went to see something, and the kid pointed out something to the dad, and he's like, hey, the dad is like, I can't see it, but you can describe it to me if you want. And the kid went okay, and he just like described that for his dad. And I think it's a beautiful scene, and it is a beautiful part, because I think children just happen to be more accepting of it. In my experience, it is so much easier to talk about blindness with children than it will ever be to talk about it with the adults around you. I have found that children just happen to be, they're not as judgmental as any adults, and they're not going to try to treat you with they're not going to try to treat you differently. Children are also not, unless they're taught to be, children are not ableist towards you, so there won't even be a hint of ableism in the treatment that children give you. I have a brother, and he is 11 years old, and when he talks about me to his friends, he says it, he's like, yeah, my sister is blind, and he says it in the most matter of fact way. And when he you know, he grew up with me, but like when he talks about my blindness and just says I'm like, yeah, she's blind or whatever, he says it in a way that's like, yeah, it's nothing, she's blind. Like he does not care, and it is very sweet. It's very sweet to know, and it's cute to see that, because you can tell that children are just better at it in general. So it's something that I think adults should learn from. Kids just happen to be better at this. And hey, if there are any blind people watching, if you ever have the opportunity, and if you ever are stuck in if you're ever stuck in something and your choice for a person to guide you is an inexperienced adult or an inexperienced child, choose the child. The child will do a better job. At least in my experience, that has been the case. So yeah, it's really sweet to see that, and I think adults could learn more from kids when it comes to accepting accepting blindness and just treating it like a normal thing. That has been my experience with my brother. Like very recently when I was on vacation, we got stuck because we got stuck for hours trying to go home in the with his car because things were happening all the time, and I had downloaded Avatar: The Last Airbender from Audible, and I'm like, in case I might need to watch series and stuff like that, I downloaded it and unzipped it, and I decided to start watching it. And it's just the audio track, and it is audio described. And my brother really enjoyed watching it with me, and he even seemed to enjoy the audio description. Now, my thought is that I thought that no one would have enjoyed the audio description because of the voice that was there. Like, I enjoyed it, but my brother's 11, so I'm like, this doesn't feel child friendly. Like, this audio description feels like something you would give an adult to watch, not a child. But he seemed to enjoy it, and I remember he always kept saying, "Are we gonna see the next episode? Are we gonna see the next episode?" I was like, "Yeah, we have time," and we made it through like 16 episodes together. Watching the audio described without, and he couldn't like see the screen or anything. And he asked me why don't we like put it on Netflix so I can see the screen or whatever. And I think the reason I gave him was like, because I don't have much signal right here, and also that my my iPad would die faster if we went to Netflix and did that, right? And he's like, okay. And he didn't ask again. He just kept asking if we were going to see the next episode, and he was able to watch it with me at my at the ways that I wanted to watch it. And I think, again, NFB, learn from the children. Learn from the children, because you are not doing that. And I think it's really sweet. So again, I think this book really proves what I kind of already know, and it is that children are just better at accepting this. And if adults ever learn from children, I think this is one of the things that they could really learn from. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the memoir and my thoughts on NFB and the things that triggered me the most and all that stuff. Have you read The Country of the Blind by Andrew Leland? What are your thoughts? I'm gonna I want to say, listen, if I see any negative comments about the author of this book, I am going to delete them and I'm going to block you. I would really appreciate if you have any negative comments. If you just do not comment, if you have any negative comments on the author, I would appreciate if you do not comment. I really would, because I'm not accepting that in my comment section, okay? But if you have any general thoughts on the memoir, I would really love to hear your thoughts on it. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. I will say this, it is not my favorite piece of blindness literature. That remains with Blind Rage, Letters to Helen Keller by Georgina Cleach. But I think it was a really good memoir to read, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Now I'm going to cut to the outro, where future me will say anything that I just have not thought of. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, hello. Time for final thoughts. I hope you enjoyed that review. It was definitely an interesting one. I have never reviewed a memoir like this, and I had a good time. Now, I do want to say, related to the NFB, again, reiterating that I am currently a member, but I still hold to the beliefs I have said. I will say there is another reason for the straight cane related to how much feedback you are receiving. However, that does not change the fact that the choice is still, there are choices still being taken away in some way, shape, or form in the way that they have structured it. And that's something I don't like. I don't like when centers do not meet people where they're at. That was also one of the issues I have with my state center. So this is not just NFB related. But yeah, these are generally my thoughts on the memoir and that specific chapter and how I reacted to it. I hope that eventually, things change to better fit, the time, and to encapsulate where we're at. But I'm not seeing that right now. I can see why some of the philosophies are the way they are, especially in our current climate and everything. However, I'm not sure how long the way that that things are going, or generally speaking, the way that they are approaching things is going to work. I don't know, but at least I like the fact that I'm a part of it, though, because if need be, I want to get involved in something that is related to blindness. There is an organization at the very least that is, well, two, since I joined two, that are likely going to be involved in it, and that I can eventually, use my skills to help somewhere in these organizations, and that's good to know, considering the reason I ended up choosing to join. But with that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I'm not gonna plug anything except to say to look at the description, and you'll find a bunch of things there if you are up for it. I don't know. It doesn't feel like plugging time, this video. I think it probably has to do with the subject matter and everything. Anyway, have a great rest of Disability Pride Month. Unfortunately, I don't have other reviews related to disability in books, so have a great rest of your Disability Pride Month. Also, happy Independence Day, because that's coming up, or might be the day I publish this video. I don't know, but just in case, happy Independence Day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, consume stories. Bye!